Other end of this, we have Miss Edith A. She's going to be sharing her part.
Good morning, family. My name is Edith, and I'm recovering from the disease of addiction. May we please take a moment of silence for the sick and suffering addicts, for the babies who are yet to be born with this affliction called addiction. Please take a moment of silence for your loved ones, for your mothers, your fathers, your sisters, your brothers, your children, your grandchildren, nieces, nephews, next door neighbors. For those that pray a silent prayer, that no hurt, harm, or danger come to their loved one or their friend while they're still out in the horrors of their addiction. Take a moment of silence for the drug dealer that step on the neck of the weak while he try to gain the road and lose his soul. Take a moment of silence for the young lady or the young man that may be trying to get into a treatment facility, but the beds are full, or their insurance won't cover it, and they just don't know how to stay stopped. So they go back out, and they do what's familiar. They pick up. Take a moment of silence so that my God can come in and connect with your God, because this is not a religious program, but a spiritual program called Narcotics Anonymous. Please take a moment of silence with me. Thank you. Freedom. How to get freedom, how to go about getting it. When I came into the program of Narcotics Anonymous, I came in bound. I came in broken. I came in miserable. I came in spiritually bankrupt. I came in a fake, a phony, a fraud, a liar, a thief, a prostitute, a deadbeat mom. I came in realizing that I didn't know nothing about nothing. And I definitely didn't know how to run my life. I didn't know how to make decisions on a regular basis that would benefit me. They always hindered me. And in the process of that, I always went back to what was familiar, the pain. I always tried to find a way and a means for me to get one more, because that's what addicts do. I went through that any means necessary. I remember when I first came in and I thought that I wanted to be free of some things. I realized that the only thing I wanted to be free of was the consequences and the repercussions of my using and my behavior and my decisions. That was the only thing that I wanted to rid myself of. That was the only thing that I actually really wanted to be free of. I didn't want to stop the lifestyle. I didn't want to stop lying. I didn't want to stop turning dates. I got a lot of pleasure out of turning dates in the beginning. But it was when I met the end of the road, when I started to feel the loneliness and the self-pity and the anger and the resentment and the remorse, the embarrassment and the shame and the guilt at the end of the road. See, I can come in and I can tell you so many things that happened to me as a result of me getting here. And it wouldn't be to glorify the disease of addiction, but it would be for clarity and identification, because I came in and I looked at the differences and I didn't focus on any of the similarities. Because nobody was talking about the things that I went through. Nobody had done the things that I had done. Nobody had been through the trenches. Nobody had been homeless. Nobody had to prostitute themselves. Nobody had to compromise themselves just to get one more. So I thought that I was going to sit on my secret. I thought I was going to take my secret with me to the grave. But I found out that pain shared is pain lessened. And that's how I started to actually get a small little glimpse of how I can go about getting some freedom in my life. See, I didn't want to tell anybody that I was molested as a child. And I didn't want to tell anybody how that made me feel and how that affected me when I used to lay on that dirty, stinky mattress and look up at the ceiling with tears rolling down my face and say, I'll be glad when he finished doing what he's doing so I can go and buy me something pretty. See, I thought that since I would hold on to that and since I would sweep that under the rug and since I wouldn't talk about that I could never be free. I thought that I would continue to live my in shackles. I found out that freedom ain't free. I found out that I had to do a whole lot of work. I had to do a whole lot of self-examination. I had to do a whole lot of self-acceptance. I had to do a whole lot of self-disclosure. I had to do a whole lot of looking at me from the inside out. I had to pierce some layers. I had to start to talk to some people and open up. I had to start to allow people to see just how vulnerable that I was. I had to allow myself to become human. I had to give myself permission to start a healing process one day at a time. Once again, freedom ain't free. I had to talk about how I felt when I was going to the drug dealer's house and I would promise him all the things that I thought that I could do in order for him to give me a little bit extra when he give me my package. All the things that I thought that I could do for him to just give me some credit after spending $700 and $900 and now he don't want to give me no credit. How that made me feel. I had to talk about that. I had to talk about the fact that it made me feel very belittled and it made me feel very hostile and angry because now I felt that I did all the things that I needed to do and some of the things I didn't want to do in order for me to get a few dollars, in order for me to get me one more. And now that I done hustled, and now that I done belittled myself, and now that I done lost my morals, my values, and my principles, now you won't give me credit. I didn't think that nobody else felt the way I felt. I didn't think that nobody else felt the way I felt when I made the decision between feeding my children and going to the dope spot. So those were some of the things that kept me back. Those were some of the things that I kept as secrets. But when I came into the program of Narcotics Anonymous, they told me that I had to do some work because they told me that this was an action program. And they told me that I can't sit around here and pimp this program. I have to roll up my sleeves and I have to become a part of the we. Because when they read the readings and they said we, I was saying with them. And the lady that was sponsoring me looked at me and said, shut up. And I felt really upset about that. I felt really bent out of shape about that, and I felt a little resentment. I said to myself, how dare she tell me to shut up? But I realized later on that I actually wasn't a part of the we. See, I was just coming in. I was coming in with a curiosity. I was coming in with a taste of what I thought that I did not want anymore, and that was what was out there, my repercussions and my consequences. But I wasn't willing to do what everybody else was doing. I wasn't willing to change. I wasn't willing to work the steps. I wasn't willing to ask for any help. I wasn't willing to write on the steps. I wasn't willing to live the steps. I wasn't willing to address the wreckage of my past. I wasn't willing to resolve any issues. So therefore, I was just like the rat in the maze. Although I came in and although I had put down the drugs, I still could not let go of the mentality. I still could not let go of the stinking, distorted thinking that I had. So when the gates were open, I refused to leave. Due to the fact that I would rather stay with the familiar pain. I found out that just using wasn't enough. I found out that there was a difference between abstinence and recovery. And when people would raise their hand and say, I have 3 years clean, I have 60 days clean, I have 5 years clean, I'd raise my hand, my spot and say, put your hand down. You don't have no clean time. I said, damn, I ain't using. What's she talking about? But later, I realized that what she was talking about is that I still was not ready to submit myself to this new way of life. I still was not ready to be a part of the we. I still was not ready to take suggestions. I still was not ready to roll up my sleeves and do the work. I still wasn't ready to call a thing a thing. I was still showing up with the body, but living in denial. I was still in a vicious cycle. I was still going places that I didn't want to go, doing a part of the we, and I definitely needed not raise my hand, talk about some clean time that I didn't have. Because when I came into these rooms, I came in a murderer. I started to murder and kill people by assassination of their character. I came in here as a predator because I started to look at the newer members and I started to put y'all ass on layaway. I started to figure out how I can manipulate you and how I can do the things that I always did with just a different set of people and a different geographical change. So guess what? I was not a part of the we. I came in here doing the same thing in here that I was doing out there. I just figured I was doing it around a set of new foods. Freedom ain't free. I had to make a decision to do what everybody else was doing that was starting to have some happiness and some joy and some peace and some serenity and some balance. Man, some integrity and dignity and respect. Some people that were starting to be responsible members of society. I started to look at some of the women and watch what they did. I started to realize that just because I was of the female gender, I was not a woman because I didn't know how to be one. I started to pay attention to the members that were in here that were married. See, they told me back in the day that you couldn't take a hoe and make her a housewife. But I got married in the program, it's Narcotics Anonymous. So I found that that was a lie. I found that that was the truth, that was their truth, and it did not have to be mine, nor did it have to be my reality. So I started to pay attention to couples, and I started to ask questions. And I found out, since I was married to another recovering addict, that one addict helping another is without parallel. So guess what? When I went home and I had an issue, I would turn over and tap that addict that was next to me and say, if I'm an addict, I need to share. Because anytime I tried to talk to him and discuss things with him as his wife, it went in one ear and out the other. Anytime we would go to a meeting together and he would hug everybody at the meeting, and then when we get home, he would walk right past me. I started to be able to address that situation from a different perspective. I had to start to look at that situation from a different area, from a different angle, and out of totally new lenses. Because I actually wanted to be a wife. I got tired of being a prostitute. I got tired of being a bust down. I got tired of being bitches, skeezers, whores, and hypes and thoughts. I wanted to be a lady. I wanted to be addressed as Miss and Ma'am. And I no longer wanted the dope dealer to approach me. I wanted the dope dealer to see me and step to the side, because today I no longer have the residue of addiction on my life. But I know that God left me with the addiction so that I know that I have not arrived. So that I will know that I still have to have reliance on Him. I still have to depend on Him. And I know that I can do nothing without Him. So He allowed me to continue to keep this disease called addiction. But I realized that every time I raised my hand, it was a cry out. It was the overlay for the underlay. I realized that I had to do a whole lot of soul searching. I had to swallow a whole lot of bitter pills. I had a whole lot of issues that I needed to deal with. And my sponsor told me that you can't give what you don't possess. And this is a program that we have to give it away in order to keep it. So what do you have to give away? And I was like, damn, that's profound. That was a good question. That was, like a red light indicator. I scratched my head. I'm like, man, that was something that made me say, what do I actually have to give to another human being? Can I give another human being something spiritual from a spiritual program? Do I have a foundation? Is it strong enough for me to stand? Is it strong enough for me to pull another individual to stand along with me? And at that time, my answer was no. be done. That let me know that I had to look at myself for what I was and who I was and not what I wanted myself to be at that time. But it also gave me hope of the person that I could become. So freedom became extremely important to me. Because I no longer have to look down on the floor and feel inferior towards anybody. I don't feel there's nobody in this room or outside the room that makes me feel insignificant or make me feel inferior. There's no other person that's superior towards me. I was wonderfully and fearfully made. But I had to keep coming back in order for me to start to see myself the way my high power sees me. I knew that he didn't want me to continue on the lifestyle that I had been in. I knew that he did not want me to continue in that vicious cycle. But I had to uncover and discover what he did want for me, what his will actually was for me. And I had to allow that to surface, and I had to embrace that and accept that and surrender to that fact and bring myself in alignment to his will. I found out that this actually really wasn't a selfish program. It was when I got here, but it's not today. In order for me to keep coming back, I have to have something to keep coming back for. And I don't only just come back for myself today. Today I come back for you. It's a joy and a pleasure to know that I'm no longer out there committing crimes, and I'm no longer out there in a drug-induced psychosis. I'm no longer out there doing the things that I used to do and having the police calling me out by a first-name basis. It's a wonderful thing to be able to go into the jails in the front door and come right out on the front. And I'm not slipping and sliding in shoes that's too small and have a piece of soap that's too small and water that won't run long enough for me to utilize that little piece of soap. I'm real grateful that I have a prayer life today. And I can allow my spirit to connect with the spirit of this program. And that's the God of my understanding. I'm real grateful that today my children don't look at me with disgust and with shame and remorse because of the times that I made a decision not to feed them but to use, and thought that if I can go and use, and when I take that first hit I can come up with a bright idea and then I can double back and feed my children. But I always ended up getting stuck. Stuck to the point where they tell me later on when they start breaking, you ain't got to go home, but you got to get the hell out of here. That kind of stuff. Stuck to the degree that every time I looked at wanting to go home, it made it even harder for me to go because of the shame and the guilt and the remorse. And the thought that I have done it again. So I know that in order for me to get free, it's a whole lot of work. But the hardest part sometimes is for me to stay free. Because although I'm not using drugs or alcohol or any type of mind-altering substance or anything to replace it, sometimes I can still get in my feelings and not know how to come out. And that's when I need God to help me. That's when I need God to show me that he is still mighty in my life and that he still has a plan for me. And how he does that, I go to a meeting and I listen to somebody share. And I listen to what they're going through on a daily basis. Not so much of what they've done, because that's good, that's clarity, that's identification, that's similarities. But what they're doing one day at a time to stay here. How are they getting through the day? How are they coping? How are they living life on life terms? Because those are some of the yets for me. So if I stick around here, and I allow myself to write on the steps. Because when I write on the steps, then I'm looking at it and I cannot live in denial because I'm now faced with the evidence. When I live the steps, it's going to make me change even when I'm unaware of the change or even when I don't want to change. So what I receive as a result of that change is spiritual growth, personal growth, development, and maturity. As long as I continue to do that, I'll have discernment. That will allow me to make some decisions based on spiritual values and principles and stay out of my head. I'm real grateful to know that. Each day I allow one of the bricks to be removed from the wall that has me bound. Each day I allow the shackles to be removed that had me so restricted. Each day I allow my voice to have something of value to say, so that when it is heard by the individual, it can be a help and a benefit, or I hope. So I'm real grateful that I have learned how to become free, and I know exactly what it takes to get there. And with that, I thank you so much for letting me share.
I'm gonna add that, Jesse. That is awesome. Let's